This house belongs to one of the wine trade's most colourful families. In fact, possibly its only colourful family, now that so many of the interesting characters have been subsumed into a morass of middle management executives. It was Ronald Avery who established the family's reputation for eccentricity, while making Avery's of Bristol the most respected independent wine merchant in Britain, if not the world. He did everything on the spur of the moment and thought nothing of leaving his office to sail to France in his converted German torpedo boat, or encouraging his friend, the Bishop of Southwark, to join him for nude bathing in the local river. The company is now run by his son John, who, as a constantly travelling master of wine and chairman of the International Wine and Food Society, is just as restless. Your father was quite famous for his behind-the-scenes blending, wasn't he?
In fairness, he never blended what I'd call great wines. But I mean, we had a wine called Côte de Fronsac, for example. And Fronsac wines in those days were very tough. And so he decided to blend in about 20% of white wine in it, believe it or not. And it made it far more palatable and far easier to drink. I mean, not strictly kosher in terms of calling it Côte de Fronsac, but nevertheless.
The Avery's house, notoriously chaotic, had been specially tidied up for our visit, but still there were piles considered unbroachable, and jobs, such as this hole in the main staircase, which have remained untackled for several years now. In the old days, this rather wonderful building was Avery's headquarters, including a very successful bar named after the liner whose panelling was specially bought up to furnish it. You can just pick out what remains of the name of this famous Bristol wine merchant. Nowadays, they've moved across Park Street to more modest premises. And behind the shop, there's this wine warehouse, which has exactly the same wines as the shop, but at subtly different prices, as well as a whole load of other wines. Then on top of that, there's a mail order business, which has a completely different lot of wines from either the shop or the wine warehouse. It's all very, very Avery's. What do you think are your strengths?
I think I get on quite well with people. I'm quite good at talking about wine. I'm quite good at finding wines, and I think I can taste pretty well.
He certainly can. He's valued as a wine judge all over the world, even if he is congenitally and quite engagingly disorganised.
Now, where's my glass? Has he lost? It was there. To me, the South African wine is a bit broader, a bit more earthy. It doesn't quite have that nice, lively character that the French wine had. It just doesn't come up and hit you. Now, right, who preferred the French Chardonnay? What was it, Saint-Romain, wasn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And who preferred the South African?
John Avery's most successful business venture actually had nothing to do with wine. At one time, he earned more from a few shares in cats than from the wine business. What has been your biggest business disaster?
The biggest business disaster was in the late 70s when we had a massive theft in the business. And that's really what's resulted in the business not being mine anymore.
Although his 4 children are all interested in wine, John had to sell the firm. It's now owned by a German wine company, delighted to bask in the reflected glory of the Avery's name, however unglamorous the company's new headquarters.
I get frustrated. People wouldn't believe it, but I actually would like to be more organised.
You ought to have an absolutely terrifying secretary.
Well, I had a French girl who wasn't particularly terrifying, but she was very good, and she got to know my foibles. I remember why I employed her. On her CV, it said, trained as an air traffic controller in Caracas. And I decided someone who could train as an air traffic controller in Caracas could probably work for me.
That is the bugbear of my life. going into John's office is, it hurts sometimes, you know.
Do you sometimes think you need a business manager?
Well, oh yes. I mean, I employed one some years ago, and I mean, I've certainly since '78, I've sort of hoped to have one.
But you don't have such a person now?
Not at this immediate moment, no.
Dumb them down too much, they don't make them all.
The warehouse next door contains a rich mixture of wines stored for customers, wines for which Averys are agents. John was a New World pioneer in the 60s, and some surprising antiques, such as this minor 83 white Burgundy.
But down below is just the single cases. We try to keep just one broken case of each wine duty paid in case there's an emergency order. We can get stuff out of bond, of course. There's some Grange there, which is always
That's nice.
highly sought after.
But I don't think you're going to have an emergency order for a 93 Côte de Saint-Mont, are you?
Yes.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah, if a restaurant suddenly runs
Yeah?
out and they want it this
93?
afternoon.
Isn't it a bit long in the tooth?
No, that's red anyway, that one, I think, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. Right? Let's have a look.
Oh, no, it is white.
White.
No, I don't know why that's there.
Yeah. Now, how many agencies do you have?
A few, they come and go a bit. Clos du Val we had, then we lost it, then we got it back again. The Tyrrells we introduced to this country, then we lost the Tyrrells agency in the mid-80s, and then we got it back, and now we've lost it again.
John's wife, Sarah, on the other hand, couldn't be more loyal.
Can I put this in the fridge and do it myself?
She's preparing their eldest child's birthday dinner, while John has been trawling the stupendous Avery family cellar, which many have envied and almost as many have benefited from. Its foundations were laid by the incomparable Ronald.
Well, one Sunday morning he had, they were always terribly generous, the Averys. A large number of people would gather there and they would have drinks in the morning. And on this particular morning, Ronald was standing by the window, very, very gently pouring out some wine, making certain that the sediment didn't get into the glass. Such was the concentration, I suppose, that the next part of the story he wouldn't be aware of. He swung round into the room with a bottle and hit a lady straight between the eyes. The lady collapsed backwards into the room, and all Ronald did was to turn back to the window and say, "Blast, I've disturbed the sediment."
J. Tidmarsh is an old friend of this close-knit family and well used to the hazards of the ramshackle household.
You would go into the downstairs loo, and you'll find that the handle will come off. people have possibly died in there. You never know.
Simon Loftus of Adams got docked in the upstairs loo for about half an hour. We wondered where on earth he got to. So did he, but we let him out in time for dinner. That was another grub scoop.
Let me out!
The important thing is not to